Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present to such an esteemed audience today. My name is Yannis Harizopoulos, and I'm a partner at McKinsey and Company. I'm based out of Athens, but I serve clients globally, from North America to Singapore, and then from the UK to South Africa. My world came to an end back in March 2020, meaning that I haven't been in a plane for the past 14 months, for better or worse. The question in my mind, in all of our clients' mind, is what's next? How we're gonna keep on working? Are we gonna go back to the way we used to work before? At McKinsey, as you know, we're doing quite a bit of work on understanding the future of work. Way before the COVID pandemic, we've done research and several publications globally, also in Greece, about how work is changing. Today, I wanted to focus a bit more on what it means the next day in a post-COVID work environment, and to be very practical and see what do companies need to do to actually cope with the new reality. I brought some slides with me, of course. So let's get us started. If we go to the next page, let me take you back to the distant 2019. I'm sure some of you remember those days. And this is what we were talking about when we were thinking about the future of work, right? We were focusing on the effect of technology on jobs. 60% of jobs could be automated up to 30%. And then we were also making predictions that about 300 to 400 millions of workers could be displaced by 2030, meaning that the skills and the profiles of workers would have changed massively. We're also thinking about societal shifts, especially Generation Z, right? 75% of Gen Z employees, they thought they should be promoted in the first year of employment. 32%, they thought they need to get promoted in the first 6 months. This is a generation that wants to have it all and to have it now. And the question is, how do you deal with this as an employer? Millennials as well, right? 40% of millennials, they plan to leave their job in 2 years. If you think about the baby boomers, the previous generations, 40% of baby boomers, they stayed at their job for more than 20 years. So how do you cope with that from a workplace? Lower workforce transaction costs. This is also something we're talking about. The gig economy, the fact that agile ways of working are actually reducing the amount of time required to make decisions. And then finally, we talked about greater connectivity. We all are connected to each other with 4 degrees of separation. When the telegraph came out, it used to be 6 degrees. Now we're much closer to each other. And believe it or not, we send about 300 billion of emails per day. This is, as many or maybe as much as 3 times the number of stars in our galaxy. So these were the themes that we're talking about. We were thinking about the future of work. And now I remind you, this is 2019. And then COVID came in the next page. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic brought 5 years of innovation in just 5 weeks. We saw amazing things happen from a future of work point of view, always. Rapid decision making. We saw organizations making decisions in one afternoon that would normally have taken them longer, months to make. Flatter, faster organizations. We looked at how people interacted during the pandemic. We downloaded their Outlook data and did some research. The amount of interactions between senior management and entry-level employees skyrocketed. We had flatter, faster organizations. People actually figured it out. They got together, they worked in smaller, agile teams. Companies were able to allocate resources in a dynamic way that we had never seen before. The network proved to be quite robust. Even people hadn't seen each other. Relationships were strong, especially with customers, vendors, community leaders. And then finally, we did see a trend of individual frontline empowerment and sense of purpose. People were focused to get things done. Now, If we go to the next page, we actually see that this pandemic, the trends we had before, just amplified them. So even before March 2020, we talked about the work for talent. This was one of the trends in the workplace. COVID is not going to change that. Companies still need to fight for talent. There was talk before COVID about shifting to a better workplace with flexible working culture. COVID is going to push this strongly. Consumerization of the workplace. Employees wanted to have a better experience in the workplace. This is going to also increase. Focus on holistic well-being, a rise of new business models in real estate with flexible working arrangements, being able to add or take away capacity, and then focus on data-driven decision-making and reliance on frontline tools. All these trends that we saw coming before into the workplace, now COVID is just going to take them to the next, in the post-COVID environment, they're going to go to the next level and they're going to be amplified. So there are three questions, and they're summarized in the next page, that our clients and the leaders we work with ask themselves about the work in the next normal. And these are the three questions I wanted to cover in my presentation today. The first question has to do with the value of remote work and how we can actually apply some of the lessons that we learned during the knockdown to our next normal operating model. The second element has to do with the right balance between on-site and remote work. How does this differ by job families and functions? And then finally, third question is, okay, how can we practically prepare to apply and implement some of these models effectively? If you go to the next page, you can actually see that anywhere you look, from public announcements from several corporate leaders to some of the surveys that we conducted around our region and beyond, everybody thinks that we're not going to come back to the workplace the way we left it back in early 2020. 56% of respondents in a survey that we did in Italy, they think they're going to adopt remote working for 2 or more days per week. We talked to 40 some global corporate companies with about 250,000 people. 60% of them confirmed that they're going to actually plan 25 to 50% of the workforce working from home. Software clients, of course, are taking this to the next level and thinking that working from home, which was the reality for them, is going to be even more amplified. If we go to the next page, you actually see that a lot of the financial institutions also have come up, and professional services have come up with announcements, right? From Standard Chartered, Itaú, Deutsche Bank. They start realizing that they don't need to have 100% of the people in the office 100% of the time. They come up with projections along the lines that 40% of our people, they're going to be working from home. They're also making moves when it comes to the real estate strategies, right? Adjusting the campuses and the capacity that they carry. And why financial institutions are important here is because if we go to the next page, and this is part of the work that we're doing globally with the McKinsey Global Institute, finance and insurance are actually one of the sectors that's most likely to be able to conduct remote work without losing productivity. What you see here is essentially the different sectors, and you can see the amount of work that they could be doing remotely without productivity loss. So you can see finance and insurance, about 75% of the work can be done remotely without losing productivity, and the theoretical maximum would be around 85%. Obviously, as you move down the list, agriculture, you go down into the single digits. The same picture is also available in the next page by country. When we studied the future of work, we actually did see that in some advanced economies, as expected, up to 45% of jobs can be done remotely. In the emerging economy, a few less. And actually in Greece, we're looking at about 30%, 20 to 30% of jobs today that can be done remotely. Now, on the following page, we see the advantages of remote work. We have increased resilience. You decouple where your employees are with where your company is, so you can actually mitigate adverse effects. You have improved talent access. You can compete for talent on a more global basis. You can actually have a higher talent pool. You increase operational efficiency, improve the cost position by reducing real estate costs. You can drive employee engagement, uh, unscheduled absences, attrition. They go down typically when employees move to some sort of a hybrid or remote work mode. And of course, you reduce the carbon footprint with all the reduction in travel and emissions. And you can see some of the reactions that are coming out from this first experience of workers with remote and hybrid working. 70% of them say that telecommuting is important when they choose their next job. Companies, they were able to realize, or they're planning on realizing, savings around 15 to 20% when it comes to occupancy related costs. And then you saw what happened, 63% of the unscheduled absences for organization team members when they worked remotely. But on the same page, we also see the importance of having people working together. I mean, being able to shake hands, to look at each other, understand body language is important for critical decision meetings, critical conversations, relationship building, and of course, offboarding and job training. An experiment done by researchers at the University of Chicago and Harvard, they actually did realize that negotiations where people get to shake hands actually are more successful, and they actually arrive to better outcomes. So if we go 2 pages down to the next page, so how do you do it practically? If we go to the next page, please. So how do you do it, right? There are 6 steps here that we see companies taking in order to enable a remote or hybrid working model. The first step has to do with revisiting the jobs that we have today and thinking about their profiles and their job families. Then taking this exercise and doing a segmentation and trying to understand which job families, which roles can be done remotely, which ones require some presence in the office, and which ones need to be done on site. And in considering this, it's the nature of the work, one driver, but it's also the economic benefit. Once there is clarity on that, then we need to define the new ways of working. And this is not an all or nothing. It's not we either all at home, as we were back in the early days of the lockdowns, or it's not we're always at work. This is about rethinking the different processes, how we work day to day, coming up with different archetypes of hybrid models and instituting that. Then, of course, the tech enablement or the tools to support us throughout this process. Change management is very important when we're asking our employees to work from home. And of course, we need to make sure that we understand the economic implications. If we can actually go to page 16 and let me focus a little bit on the new way of working. There are 7 employee journeys that we need to rethink here because they will require changes in a remote or in a hybrid setting. Recruiting. I mean, how do we do recruiting without face-to-face interviews? Or onboarding of employees? And that's a tough one, right? How do you get somebody into the culture of a company without them meeting the team all the time or being exposed as much as the previous generation? Day-to-day work. What are our day-to-day routines, and how do we actually enable people that are in the office and people remotely to work together? How do you do performance management? Number 4, how do you do development and learning, rewards and recognitions, and then of course the departure. Just to give you on the day-to-day work on the following page, a few ideas here. I mean, the big idea is you need to install a remote first approach. This is a culture where remote employees are treated equally as on-site employees. We need to make sure that we level the playing field between remote and on-site. We need to make sure that we take the pulse of the employees that are far away from the physical location. And we need to do double down on pulse checks, on health checks, see what's happening with them. And we need to foster a sense of purpose to employees. Some of the tools from companies that are already remotely working today, like GitHub, if we go to the next page, video conference by default, autonomy and trust as a leadership mindset. This is important that we empower employees and we actually manage output, not input, how many hours you've been at work. Documenting and enabling asynchronous communication, documenting the kind of work we're doing, creating repositories, and then making an effort to get together times, both remotely and in the office when conditions permit. On the following page, you see the digital tools that you require, right? And I'm not going to go into detail here, but there are solutions today from recruitment, onboarding, day to day. We all discovered them during the lockdowns. Development and learning, recognition also, and departure. So along each one of these 7 journeys, we also need to think about our technology strategy. Finally, the most important bit is on the following page, is the change management. You need to make sure that your leaders actually embrace this remote working or hybrid working mode. This is not a setting where the senior management is sitting in their closed offices and junior colleagues are working away. The leadership needs to be the example for this. We also need to think about the cultural changes we need to make here. Besides leadership, how we communicate, how we make sure we have events to bring us together. How do we define our culture? And finally, we need to establish team norms, right? We need to have routines that we all need to stick around in order for us to work more effectively. I wanted to spend the last 2 minutes or 1 minute of my presentation on talking about real estate implications on the following page. So what does this mean for the real estate market, and what do we see clients doing? Each dot here that you see are some of our clients and what they're doing with the real estate portfolio. You see that it really depends on their business strategy. So if they're in a growth mode, they're not going to be releasing a lot of their portfolio. If in the cost reduction mode, we see actually reductions up to 50% of the portfolio. But in general, no one has said that my real estate occupancy is not going to be reduced, right? We're looking at reduction rates between 5 and almost 50%. And finally, on the economic model on this, is it worth the effort? If we go to the last page, you see that the savings are 20 to 30% of the payroll, just on the last page, please, on the following page. And where do these come from, right? They come from real estate, obviously, from travel, and then, of course, from other benefits. There is investment that needs to be made in terms of device, data security, and infrastructure, but all in all, the benefit is positive. So I hope this gave you some perspective on some of the actions that you need to do as leaders in your respective organizations, how you're thinking about remote and hybrid working. And let's all explore this exciting new journey together. Thank you very much for your attention.